The 1976 remake of King Kong is the first film I remember seeing in a movie theater. I would have been 3 years old. Naturally, it made a big impression and remains near and dear to my heart. Directed by John Guillermin and produced by Dino De Laurentiis, this ambitious project reimagined the iconic 1933 original for a modern audience while dealing with the challenges of adapting a beloved classic. It has since become something of a meme. As with many big films of the 1970s, it has become difficult for modern audiences to appreciate what a mammoth event in pop culture this was. Behind-the-scenes details are scarce, and the huge marketing push is long forgotten. Let's take a trip back to the fabulous 1970s and rediscover Dino De Laurentiis' epic production of King Kong.
Initiate sequence. Retrotron Entertainment presents
That 70s Nerd. I explore the hidden depths of 1970s pop culture, from movies and television to books, comics, and magazines, music, toys, and technology. Discover forgotten classics and hidden gems you will not find anywhere else with That 70s Nerd. The 1933 film King Kong remains a groundbreaking masterpiece that combined innovative storytelling, cutting-edge technology, and unforgettable visual effects. The film's success owed much to the groundbreaking stop-motion animation of Willis O'Brien, whose meticulous craftsmanship brought Kong and Skull Island's creatures to life with astonishing realism for its time. King Kong achieved critical and commercial success, revolutionizing special effects and inspiring generations of filmmakers. Its legacy endures as a cultural icon, credited with shaping the monster movie genre and cementing its place as one of Hollywood's most innovative and beloved classics. The original novelization of King Kong was written by Delos W. Lovelace and published in December 1932, several months before the film's release in 1933. The novelization was part of the film's promotional campaign, designed to build anticipation for the groundbreaking movie. However, the copyright history of the novel and the film became tangled in disputes over the years. The novel's copyright was not renewed properly, causing it to fall into the public domain in the United States, while the film's copyright was actively maintained by RKO. This led to legal battles and confusion over the ownership of King Kong as a property, particularly concerning its characters and storyline. The issue was further complicated when Universal Studios and RKO faced disputes over licensing and trademarks, resulting in various court rulings that have shaped the film's and novel's complex intellectual property status to this day. Born in 1919, Dino De Laurentiis was an influential Italian film producer renowned for his pivotal role in shaping Italian and international cinema. He began his career in the film industry in the 1930s and emerged as a dynamic producer during the post-World War II era. De Laurentiis co-produced several iconic Italian films, including Federico Fellini's La Strada and Nights of Cabiria, both of which won Academy Awards for Best Foreign Language Film. He later expanded his reach with epic productions like War and Peace, Barabbas, and The Bible in the Beginning. By the 1970s, he relocated to the United States, producing films such as Serpico, starring Al Pacino, which marked his transition to Hollywood while maintaining his reputation for ambitious, high-quality projects. The journey to remake King Kong in 1976 began with a mixture of ambition, inspiration, and competition. Two conflicting narratives surround the film's origins. One version credits Michael Eisner, then an ABC executive, who was inspired to remake the 1933 classic after watching it on television in 1974. Eisner pitched the idea to Paramount Pictures chairman Barry Diller, who enlisted the legendary Dino De Laurentiis to helm the project. Another version, however, comes directly from De Laurentiis, who claimed the idea was entirely his own. According to him, the concept for a King Kong remake arose from seeing a poster of the original in his daughter Francesca's room. When Diller later proposed a monster movie project, De Laurentiis suggested King Kong, and the project gained traction. Perhaps both stories are true, and the idea of a Kong remake was simply in the air. Despite the disputed origins, Paramount quickly agreed to co-finance the film, covering half of the $12 million budget in exchange for US and Canadian distribution rights. However, securing the rights to King Kong proved to be a daunting task. More on this in a bit. De Laurentiis approached the remake with his characteristic grand vision, aiming not just to reproduce the classic but to modernize and reimagine it as a monumental cultural event. King Kong would be his most ambitious gamble yet. With the US economy in a recession and modern blockbuster filmmaking still in its infancy, Jaws, 1975, being the only comparable precedent, De Laurentiis boldly poured $24 million into the project, making it the most expensive independent production of its time. The gamble was not without competition. Universal Pictures, recognizing the enduring appeal of King Kong and perhaps seeking to protect its legacy as the monster movie studio, as well as the record-breaking box office of Jaws, announced its own plans to produce a version, leading to a heated legal battle over the character's rights. Universal argued that elements of the King Kong story were in the public domain, sparking a legal tug-of-war that delayed both productions. Both Paramount and Universal Studios approached RKO Pictures, the then owner of the King Kong rights, with competing offers to secure the character's licensing. De Laurentiis offered $200,000 plus 3% of gross profits, while Universal proposed $200,000 and 5% of net profits. The negotiations, muddled by verbal agreements and misunderstandings, set the stage for an expensive legal showdown. By April 1975, Paramount believed it had secured the rights to King Kong, signing a contract with RKO. Universal, however, claimed they had a verbal agreement with RKO for their competing film. Paramount forged ahead, setting a December 1976 release date, while Universal announced its intent to begin filming The Legend of King Kong on January 5, 1976. The situation escalated when Universal filed a $25 million lawsuit against Paramount, De Laurentiis, and RKO, claiming copyright infringement and breach of contract. Universal also argued that the 1930s novelization of King Kong was in the public domain, which would allow them to proceed with their own version. De Laurentiis countersued Universal for $90 million, alleging damages and interference with his production. The story spilled out into newspapers, magazines, and local news outlets, heating up into a huge controversy. De Laurentiis refused to budge. As far as he was concerned, he'd gotten there first, and Universal was maliciously interfering with his production. Universal was calling their picture The Legend of King Kong, so De Laurentiis dubbed his movie King Kong: The Legend Reborn. He also fought back by releasing an infamous announcement poster, which proclaimed, "There is still only one King Kong. 1 year from today, Paramount Pictures and Dino De Laurentiis will bring you the most exciting, original motion picture event of all time." The irony of calling a remake original did not faze De Laurentiis, and the thrilling art of John Berkey promised a movie so stunning that it did more than anything else to put an end to the Universal project. The court ultimately ruled in favor of Paramount. They did in fact hold the rights to produce a remake of King Kong, and RKO had exclusive rights to the 1933 film. However, the rights to the character Kong belonged to Merian C. Cooper, who transferred them to his son Richard, who sold the rights to Universal. Owning the character was not enough to legally produce a remake. To end the stalemate, De Laurentiis capitulated and agreed to pay Universal a percentage of the profits from Paramount's King Kong remake, along with other concessions. In exchange, Universal abandoned The Legend of King Kong, although they publicly declared their intention to produce their own version in the future, a promise they fulfilled with Peter Jackson's 2005 remake. De Laurentiis went back to calling his project simply King Kong. Let's take a closer look at The Legend of King Kong. Over the years, the production itself has become something of a legend, like Jodorowsky's Dune, a greatest movie never made. But was that really the case? For those who disliked the De Laurentiis version, the idea of a period-set, literal remake with stop-motion characters has always held a strong appeal. Joseph Sargent was rumored to be the director favored for the project. Joseph Sargent had directed many television movies. His best-known feature-length works were arguably the action movie White Lightning starring Burt Reynolds, the biopic of MacArthur starring Gregory Peck, and the horror anthology Nightmares. His most popular feature film was the subway thriller The Taking of Pelham 123, 1974, one of the best action movies of the 1970s. More important was the inclusion of visual effects artist Jim Danforth. Jim Danforth, born in 1940, developed an early passion for filmmaking and special effects, inspired by pioneers like Willis O'Brien and Ray Harryhausen. He taught himself the intricacies of stop-motion animation and began creating his own projects as a teenager. Danforth's professional career began in the 1960s when he worked as an assistant animator on The Wonderful World of the Brothers Grimm, 1962, which featured stop-motion sequences by George Pal. His talent for combining animation with live-action footage quickly set him apart in the field. Danforth received widespread acclaim for his work on The Seven Faces of Dr. Lao, 1964, where he animated several mythical creatures, earning his first Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects. Throughout the 1970s, Danforth continued to push the boundaries of visual effects. His work on When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, 1970, was particularly notable, showcasing his ability to blend realistic stop-motion characters with live-action performances. Danforth also contributed to other notable projects, including Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, where he worked on visual effects, and Flesh Gordon, 1974, a cult pornographic science fiction parody that featured his animation skills. By 1975, Jim Danforth had established himself as a master of stop-motion animation and visual effects, respected for his technical expertise and creative vision. Danforth would go on to be the key figure in the mythology of the superior unmade Kong remake, complaining bitterly for decades about his experience. No doubt, The Legend of King Kong would have put Jim Danforth at the top of the Hollywood visual effects food chain, and he deeply resented having missed his greatest opportunity. To pen the remake, Bo Goldman was brought on board. Bo Goldman, 1932 to 2023, was an acclaimed American screenwriter and playwright known for his incisive and deeply humanistic storytelling, though it was not until the early 1970s that he truly found his footing in Hollywood. His big break came in 1975 when he co-wrote the screenplay for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, adapted from Ken Kesey's novel. Directed by Milos Forman, the film became a critical and commercial triumph, winning 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and earning Goldman his first Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay. By 1975, Bo Goldman had established himself as a powerful voice in American cinema. There are 2 screenplays floating around. I will refer to them as Draft 1 and Draft 2. Let's take a closer look at what might have been. In Depression-era New York City, out-of-work actress Ann Darrow faces hard times, but maintains her charm and resolve. Filmmaker Carl Denham, known for his daring wildlife documentaries, struggles to stay afloat, selling stock footage to make ends meet. He has chartered the ship Venture, loaded with weapons and gas bombs, for a secretive film project inspired by the legend of King Kong. Jack Driscoll, the Venture's first mate, manages to bribe the harbor master to delay evicting the ship for another day. Denham auditions actresses for the female lead in his film, but finds them all unsuitable. Wandering the city, he notices Anne, attempting to buy an apple she cannot afford. Denham buys 5 pounds of apples for her and assaults the vendor for being rude. He flees with Anne, and they end up in the fish market, where he buys a big fish, takes Anne to Sloppy Louie's diner, and has the cook fry up the fish for them. There, Denham pitches his film project. Desperate and unwilling to return to Ohio, defeated by the Big Apple, Anne agrees. The script cuts straight to the Venture's departure. Jack and Anne meet, and their instant attraction is clear. Captain Engelhorn briefs Denham on the voyage's route, with the narration transitioning into a montage reminiscent of classic Hollywood, showing Denham shooting screen tests of Anne and life aboard the ship. Near the journey's end, Denham reveals the existence of 2 maps, one leading to the area of Skull Island, and the other based on a Norwegian captain's account, taking them to the island itself. Denham's descriptions of the island of Kong make Jack and Engelhorn skeptical, but it is too late to turn back. Upon arrival, the crew hears gamelans from the shore and rows toward the island, escorted by native canoes. Jack, who speaks the language of the Nias Islanders, leads the crew up giant tree roots to a native village dominated by an enormous stone wall. The village is described as being filled with terraces made of stone, megaliths, giant mushroom shapes with gargoyles growing out of them, and sarcophagi with carvings of lizards and birds. The native king and queen preside over a frenzied ceremony, dancers in a trance encircling them, as the high priest apparently prepares to execute a slave girl at an altar. The crew is spotted, halting the ritual abruptly. The scene unfolds similarly to the original 1933 film, with the natives speaking the fictional Nias Island language, which is rendered in subtitles, a unique touch in this script. That night, Anne and Jack share a heartfelt moment on the ship's deck, expanding their relationship beyond the previous version. Later, Anne is kidnapped by the Islanders. As Denham and the crew row ashore, Denham brings his camera to document the rescue. The offering of Anne is more chaotic and frenzied than in the original. Torches tossed into the top of the wall ignite a raging fire, and native gatekeepers break into brawls as tensions rise. Anne, described as calm, waiting, not scared, but stunned, is fastened to the altar. In subtitles, the natives chant, "We call thee, Kong, O mighty one, great Kong, thy gift is here, O mighty one, great Kong." Kong emerges from the jungle, covered in forest debris, with wells for eye sockets, nostrils like howitzers, and a mouth like a volcano. He seizes Anne and retreats into the jungle. The Venture crew follows, encountering a Stegosaurus in a glade, a Brontosaurus in marsh waters, and eventually Kong, who attacks them on the fallen tree bridge. Only Jack and Denham survive. Jack pursues Kong after evading a Dimetrodon. Meanwhile, Kong takes Anne to his lair at the top of Skull Mountain. In a newly added bonding scene, Kong offers Anne a massive coconut, and she feels weirdly calm knowing he will not hurt her. Kong defends her against an Elasmosaurus and later from a pterosaur, allowing Jack and Anne to escape by leaping from a high ledge into the river below. Kong pursues the pair back to the village, where Denham uses gas bombs to subdue him. Anne shows unexpected compassion for Kong as he is chained to a barge and towed behind the Venture. The film jumps to the opening night at Madison Square Garden. Unlike the original, Denham has enough footage from the voyage to pad out the night's entertainment, a minor plot point that neither adds nor detracts from the story. The audience includes Hollywood and radio celebrities. Flashing cameras agitate Kong, who escapes, rampaging through New York City in search of Anne. He abducts her from her hotel room and derails an elevated train before climbing the Empire State Building. In a climactic battle, Kong is brought down by biplanes. Mortally wounded, he gazes at Anne one last time before falling to his death. The script ends with an epilogue, set 20 years later. Jack and Anne are married, living on the west coast of Sumatra with their young daughter. Though they have found peace, the memory of Kong lingers, haunting their lives. This is clearly a draft script. It introduces some new elements and updates the tone, more of a cynical 1970s take, but fails to make memorable characters out of its cast, especially Kong. It is a literal scene-by-scene remake, and highlights how much of an original interpretation Dino's script was. In Draft 2, several key changes refine the narrative, deepen the characters, and introduce fresh elements that contrast with Draft 1. Here's a point-by-point comparison. In Draft 2, Carl Denham becomes a more dynamic and entertaining character, freely advertising his upcoming adventure to anyone who will listen, certain that he has the ultimate box office hit on his hands. He is introduced as teasing an audience of city kids with hints of his mysterious expedition, showcasing his showmanship. This adds depth and a sense of spectacle to his persona, making him more compelling from the outset than in Draft 1. In Draft 2, the ship has been rechristened the Panama Queen. The scene is rewritten with Denham personally bribing the harbor master, showing his impatience and eagerness to begin the voyage. This improvement heightens the drama and humor of the moment. In Draft 2, Anne's introduction is expanded, with a more elaborate fruit vendor scene that emphasizes her resilience and likability. The diner scene is polished to include foreshadowing, with Anne sensing the gravity, perhaps a sense of destiny, around Denham's mysterious project. These additions make the characters more engaging and hint at the epic scale of the story. In Draft 2, the montage is removed, replaced with detailed scenes such as Anne's scream test, and Denham screening rushes for Anne, intercutting her screen tests with jungle footage to show how he makes his films. Alone in the dark, romantic feelings emerge, and they kiss, but Anne runs away, complicating their dynamic. This plot thread is left unexplored and unresolved. In Draft 2, Jack's voluminous anthropological knowledge is reduced, making him less of an all-knowing figure. The fog bank is now emphasized, heightening the island's mysterious atmosphere. After the crew returns to the ship, Engelhorn wants to depart, as in the Peter Jackson version. The scene between Anne and Jack on the deck has been shortened and rewritten, with Jack reminiscing about his childhood in the East Indies. In Draft 2, pursuing Kong and Anne, the crew encounters the skeleton of a dinosaur stripped clean of its flesh by prehistoric insects. In a relapse demonstrating that Goldman was still struggling with his characters, Jack again becomes a walking encyclopedia, knowing more about dinosaurs than Denham. And in the first Kong fight, the T-Rex has now been changed to a Triceratops. In Draft 2, after knocking Kong out with the gas bombs, Denham sets up lights and cameras and films Kong. then dances a jig around the unconscious creature, adding a darkly comedic note. The venue changes from Madison Square Garden to the Winter Garden Theater. On the night of the show, Anne and Jack tell Denham they will only perform if Kong is sent back to his island. Denham is now very much like Fred Wilson in the De Laurentiis version, or the Carl Denham of Peter Jackson's, but he relents and settles for one showing of Kong, just to get Anne and Jack on stage together. In this draft, Denham causes Kong's rampage by physically forcing Anne to stand in front of Kong for the photographers. In Draft 2, Kong battles a steam shovel instead of an elevated train. Denham takes his camera on the biplane and dies plunging to the street below, still filming, adding tragedy and irony to his character arc. The famous last line of the original is now spoken by a female journalist. The epilogue is omitted, returning to the original 1933 ending. Draft 2 enriches the narrative with deeper characterizations, tighter pacing, and a mix of humor and tragedy. But Goldman is still having trouble pegging his main characters and finding a through line. This is a scene-by-scene literal remake, lacking its own identity. Kong himself feels like an afterthought left for Jim Danforth to figure out. Interestingly, Danforth always complained about the foul language in the Paramount version, but Goldman's scripts use even more profanity and swearing, even the F-bomb, and include many scatological gags. The Legend of Kong is not the unmade masterpiece fans have imagined it to be. It could have made a good movie remake, but it lacks the clear conceptual through line that has made the De Laurentiis version an enduring 70s classic. With the universal battle behind him, De Laurentiis could now focus all his attention on his production of King Kong. The production of King Kong was as monumental as the towering ape himself. With a budget of $24 million, the largest for an independent film at that time, Dino De Laurentiis set out to create a cinematic spectacle that would rival the most ambitious projects in Hollywood history. From casting to filming, every aspect of the production presented unique challenges that tested the resilience of the cast and crew. Rather than a straightforward remake, the 1976 adaptation sought to differentiate itself with new storylines, updated themes, and a focus on the political and cultural issues of the time. The result was a film that blended the timeless allure of King Kong with a sharp critique of corporate greed and environmental exploitation. For his scribe, De Laurentiis chose Lorenzo Semple. Lorenzo Semple Jr., 1923 to 2014, was an American screenwriter and playwright best known for his sharp wit, genre versatility, and significant contributions to television and film during the 1960s and 1970s. Semple's career took a pivotal turn when he ventured into television in the 1960s. He was the creative force behind the campy and colorful 1966 television series Batman, which became a cultural phenomenon. Following his success in television, Semple transitioned to feature films, becoming a sought-after screenwriter for high-profile projects. By 1975, Semple had solidified his reputation as a screenwriter, positioning him as a creative force in Hollywood. Fresh from his work on 3 Days of the Condor, 1974, Semple collaborated with De Laurentiis to craft a screenplay that deliberately diverged from the 1933 original. Semple considered all genre fiction to be for children, but also considered Kong to be somewhat of Hollywood royalty, so his Kong script is a lot less silly than the script for Flash Gordon he would write for De Laurentiis in 1980, but still lacking in fan reverence. Dino envisioned a modernized Beauty and the Beast, Romeo and Juliet tragic love story that climaxed atop the Twin Towers, and Semple agreed. According to Semple, "We made a very deliberate attempt not to be anything like the original movie in tone or mood. Dino wanted it to be light and amusing rather than portentous. I don't think the original was meant to be mythic. The original Kong is extremely crude. I don't mean it's not wonderful, it was remarkable for its time, but was a very small backlot picture. We thought times had changed so much that audiences were more sophisticated. Dino felt we could have more fun with it. We hoped to do sensational things with advanced special effects on a big screen. In an effort to avoid accusations of copying the classic, the filmmakers stripped away certain elements, such as the dinosaurs that populated Skull Island in the original. Instead, the script honed in on the relationship between Kong and Dwan, the female lead, giving the story a more intimate and human focus. The screenplay also reflected the anxieties and cultural concerns of its era. The plot was centered on the Petrox Corporation, a fictional oil company embarking on an expedition to Skull Island in search of untapped resources. This storyline, rooted in the real-world energy crisis of the 1970s, cast a critical eye on corporate exploitation and environmental destruction.
I've been in 2 gas lines already.
This morning?
This morning.
This is unreal. Isn't this disgusting? Why doesn't anybody contact the president? Why is he letting this happen to us?
And Darrow's character was also given a unique update. Dwan was originally envisioned as a photojournalist, but Dino asked Semple to create a more romantic character. Played by Jessica Lange in her film debut, Dwan is portrayed as a free-spirited actress with a quirky charm. Dwan's relationship with Kong, while still central to the story, carries an air of irony and humor, reflecting the film's broader tonal shift toward 1970s cinema. Other early ideas were dropped. For instance, an early draft included a subplot involving the Vatican Library, and a fish-out-of-water Vatican librarian character. That element was ultimately dropped in favor of focusing on the main storyline. And all of the exposition related to the Vatican librarian was given to Jack Prescott, eventually pared down to a single line of dialogue. The script was completed by December 1975, laying the foundation for a King Kong that was both familiar and daringly new. Jessica Lange, a then unknown model with no prior acting experience, was selected for the role of Dwan, the film's female lead. De Laurentiis famously rejected Meryl Streep during the audition process, deeming her not pretty enough.
So I went in and I sat down and he looked at me and he looked at his son and he said, Cosa? Che brutta. Perché portarmi così, questa cosa? He said, you know, she's ugly. Why do you bring me this steak?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dino was unsatisfied with the current crop of it girls and started searching for an unknown. Jessica Lange, born 1949, studied art at the University of Minnesota before leaving to travel the world as a free-spirited artist. She eventually settled in New York City, where she studied acting under the tutelage of renowned acting coach Herbert Berghoff. Herbert Berghoff was an Austrian-American actor, director, and acting teacher, renowned for founding the HB Studio in New York City, which became a hub for training some of the most celebrated actors in American theater and film, known for his emphasis on naturalistic acting. Jeff Bridges was cast as Jack Prescott, Princeton anthropologist, a character loosely based on the original's merchant marine Jack Driscoll, and also the deleted Vatican librarian. Bridges brought a rugged bohemian authenticity to the role. Jeff Bridges was born in 1949 into a prominent Hollywood family, the son of legendary actor Lloyd Bridges and actress and writer Dorothy Bridges. Growing up alongside his older brother Beau Bridges, also an actor, Jeff was immersed in the entertainment industry from an early age. Bridges made his first on-screen appearance as a child, working with his father on the television series Sea Hunt in the late 1950s. He pursued acting seriously as a young adult, also studying at the Herbert Berghoff Studio in New York City, before embarking on a professional career. His breakout role came in 1971 with The Last Picture Show. Bridges delivered a sensitive and compelling performance that earned him an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. Throughout the 1970s, Bridges built a reputation as a versatile and charismatic performer, adept at both leading and supporting roles. His standout performances included Fat City, 1972, a gritty boxing drama directed by John Huston, and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, 1974, a crime caper opposite Clint Eastwood, which earned him a second Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. By 1975, he was recognized as a rising star in Hollywood, known for his authenticity and naturalistic acting style. Charles Grodin took on the role of Fred Wilson, the ambitious and sometimes ruthless Petrox executive. Charles Grodin, 1935 to 2021, studied acting at the University of Miami before pursuing further training under the renowned acting teacher Uta Hagen in New York City. He initially worked in theater, appearing on Broadway and directing plays. His breakout film role came in 1972 with The Heartbreak Kid. His comedic timing and ability to balance humor with poignant character moments earned him critical acclaim. By 1975, Grodin was recognized as a versatile actor capable of bringing depth and subtlety to comedic and dramatic roles alike, which he put to good use in King Kong. The supporting cast included a strong ensemble, with Jack O'Halloran playing the crew member Joe Perko, Renee Auberjonois as the ship's scientist Roy Bagley. Casting the creative team that would bring King Kong to life was just as important as casting the characters. The core creative team was assembled in 1975. They included cinematographer Richard H. Klein, born 1926, grew up immersed in the film industry. As the son of Benjamin H. Klein, a prominent American cinematographer, this early exposure to filmmaking inspired him to pursue a career behind the camera. He became a full-fledged cinematographer in the 1960s, bringing a distinct visual style to the films he worked on. Known for his ability to create atmospheric lighting and dynamic visuals, Klein quickly earned a reputation as one of Hollywood's most talented and reliable cinematographers. In 1970, Klein gained widespread recognition for his work on Camelot, 1967, a lush and visually stunning adaptation of the Broadway musical, earning him his first Academy Award nomination for Best Cinematography. He followed this success with a series of high-profile projects, including The Andromeda Strain, 1971, for which his stark and precise cinematography contributed significantly to the film's tension and futuristic aesthetic. Klein's collaboration with director Richard Fleischer on films like Soylent Green, 1973, further cemented his status as a top cinematographer of the era. By 1975, Richard H. Klein was firmly established as one of Hollywood's leading cinematographers. Rick Baker, born 1950, grew up fascinated by horror films and monsters, drawing inspiration from iconic figures like Lon Chaney and Jack Pierce. He began experimenting with makeup effects as a teenager, honing his craft through self-teaching and creating his own prosthetics. Baker's professional career began in the early 1970s, where he worked as an assistant to legendary makeup artist Dick Smith on films such as The Exorcist, 1973. By 1975, Baker had established himself as a future trailblazer in special effects makeup, known for his meticulous attention to detail and ability to create lifelike and emotionally expressive characters. Mentor Hubner, 1917 to 2001, was an American artist, illustrator, and conceptual designer whose visionary work in pre-production art and storyboarding shaped the visual language of numerous iconic films. By the 1960s, he had established himself as a leading creative force in Hollywood, contributing to the visual development of major films. His ability to translate abstract ideas into vivid storytelling helped directors bring their visions to life, often serving as a key intermediary between script and screen, such as the Planet of the Apes series, where he created evocative concept art that helped define the film's post-apocalyptic aesthetic. He also worked on Soylent Green, crafting visuals that captured the film's dystopian future and enhancing its immersive world building. By 1975, Mentor Hubner was recognized as a master of conceptual art and storyboarding, whose work played a pivotal role in shaping the visual direction of many landmark films, including Ralph Bakshi's 1978 animated epic The Lord of the Rings. Mario Chiari, 1909 to 1989, was an Italian production designer, art director, and architect, whose visionary work shaped the visual style of numerous acclaimed films, blending his architectural expertise with a flair for cinematic storytelling. Born in Florence, Italy, Chiari studied architecture and began his career in set design for Italian theater before transitioning to the burgeoning Italian film industry. His collaborations with renowned directors of the Italian neo-realist and post-neo-realist movements helped define the visual aesthetic of mid-century Italian cinema. By 1975, Mario Chiari had solidified his legacy as a production designer. His contributions to both Italian and international cinema set a standard for excellence in art direction, influencing generations of designers and filmmakers with his commitment to storytelling through visual design. Del Hennessy, 1926 to 1981, began his career in the 1950s, working in the art departments of various studios and contributing to television and smaller film projects. His breakthrough came with Fantastic Voyage, 1966, where he designed the interiors of a microscopic submarine and the surreal landscapes of the inner human body. By 1975, Del Hennessy had established himself as one of the most innovative and versatile production designers in Hollywood. A key contributor to the success of the 1976 King Kong was illustrator and fine artist John Berkey, 1932 to 2008. Berkey developed a passion for art at an early age and studied at the Minneapolis School of Art. Berkey began his professional career in the 1950s as a commercial illustrator, creating artwork for advertising campaigns and book covers. His breakthrough into science fiction came in the 1960s when he began producing covers for paperback novels, capturing fantastical scenes with a realism and grandeur that redefined the genre's visual aesthetic. By 1975, John Berkey had established himself as a leading figure in science fiction art, known for his ability to balance technical detail with sweeping imaginative compositions. To direct Kong, De Laurentiis went with John Guillermin, 1925 to 2015, a French-born British film director, producer, and screenwriter known for his work on action, adventure, and disaster films. In 1974, he co-directed The Towering Inferno, a massive box office hit that received critical acclaim for its suspenseful direction and groundbreaking visual effects, earning several Academy Award nominations. By 1975, Guillermin was firmly established as a versatile and accomplished filmmaker, known for his ability to handle large-scale productions and bring emotional depth to action-driven narratives. Before filming could begin, locations had to be selected, and the world of Kong had to be designed. The film would rely heavily on sound stages and backlots, but locations would be required for Kong Island and the climactic New York City sequence. Malta, Bora Bora, and Catalina, California were all mooted. Richard Klein, an avid surfer, suggested Hawaii. He had the remote coast of Kauai in mind. It was quickly greenlit as a location after a brief scouting trip. New York was scouted next, focusing on how to capture the majestic Twin Towers on film. As pre-production ramped up, it became apparent that Guillermin and Chiari were not seeing eye to eye. After a bit of tension, it was decided for Del Hennessy to take over production design and for Chiari to focus on what Kong would look like. It had already been decided that Kong was not a gorilla, something that always seemed obvious to me from the original film. Born in Italy, Carlo Rambaldi, 1925 to 2012, studied fine arts at the Academy of Fine Arts in Bologna, focused on painting and sculpture. His career in cinema began in the 1950s, creating special effects and mechanical creatures for Italian horror and science fiction films. Collaborating with directors such as Mario Bava and Federico Fellini, Rambaldi quickly gained recognition for his artistry and technical ingenuity. By 1975, Rambaldi had firmly established himself as a pioneer in practical effects, blending his artistic talent with engineering know-how to bring imaginative creatures to life on screen. Dino De Laurentiis, who had worked with Rambaldi on Barbarella, commissioned the FX Wiz to build a massive, life-sized animatronic Kong. The reason for the so-called Robot Kong remains unclear. Some say it was always a publicity stunt, while others maintain that De Laurentiis fully expected the mechanical prop to star in his movie, and that the Kong costume was only a backup. De Laurentiis bragged that the Robo-Kong would be able to walk down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. Standing 40 feet tall and weighing over 6 tons, the mechanical ape was envisioned as the centerpiece of the film. Whatever De Laurentiis' intentions were, technical difficulties limited use of the massive mechanical prop to just a few brief scenes. Despite that, the animatronic Kong did become a focal point of the film's marketing campaign, generating significant buzz. It became clear early on that the production would need a reliable standby for the Robo-Kong. De Laurentiis had already vetoed stop motion. It is unclear why. Perhaps he feared comparison to the original film, or that his Kong would be mistaken for a Ray Harryhausen production. It could just be possible that since there was so little of it in Italy, Dino couldn't wrap his head around how to integrate it into his film. Dino suggested a costume, but one more realistic than what was seen in Japanese monster movies at the time. Appreciation for Japanese kaiju FX has reached the Western Hemisphere, but in the 1970s it was associated with low-budget movies. Whatever Dino came up with, he knew it would have to be impressive. Work on Kong began officially in October 1975, before the legal issues with Universal were even settled. A life-sized head, arms, and legs would have to be created, all handled by the technically adept Rambaldi. That left the suit. Gorilla suits ranked even lower than Japanese monsters back then. Dino would have to be careful, or his epic would be laughed out of theaters. Federico, Dino's son, who was on board as a line producer, went to work searching for the perfect artist to fill this crucial role. He put the word out in Hollywood, and the name Rick Baker kept coming up. Baker was a young makeup whiz whose hobby was creating realistic gorilla costumes. Some of his creations had even appeared in films. After screening a few of Baker's films, Federico called the artist and asked if he would be able to create a full-body prosthetic appliance for Kong. Federico was treated to a taste of what working with the 25-year-old Baker would be like. Rick answered in the negative and went on to say that the idea was stupid and that the Planet of the Apes franchise had wrung that idea dry. Baker stated that he would create an articulated mask that would convey far more emotion than an appliance. But all that would have to wait until he'd finished his current movie, Squirm. Federico was shocked, but he appreciated Baker's confidence and agreed to look him up once Squirm had wrapped. Meanwhile, Rambaldi started working on the mechanical Kong assets as well as the mask. When Baker showed up ready to start work, in November 1975, there didn't seem to be anything for him to do. At first, Baker balked, but after visiting Rambaldi's workshop and seeing his artwork and mechanisms, he changed his mind. However, Baker would now be an apprentice or assistant, which didn't sit well with the cocky young upstart. This conflict would lead to many delays and bitter disagreements, and to this day, Baker cannot bring himself to say anything good about the production. But more of that in parts 2, 3, and 4 of this series. Dino intervened, giving each artist 6 weeks to create a prototype costume. Baker built his ultimate gorilla suit with realistic hair, arm extensions, and ape-shaped hands and feet. Baker gave his best Kong audition, but since he had not been asked to create a gorilla, the response was negative. However, he lucked out. Rambaldi was so involved with creating the Robo-Kong and the many miniatures needed for the film, he never even made a suit. Baker was retained and also given the role of Kong, which he had not been planning on. Meanwhile, with the help of visual effects supervisor Glenn Robinson, Rambaldi's mechanical assets were budgeted and the designs were finalized. Robinson priced several companies, but Rambaldi's designs were so ambitious and complex, the time needed to realize them was too long, and the price tag too high. Robinson did his own redesigns based on simple hydraulic mechanisms, and Dino ended up giving him the job. This produced considerable tension between Rambaldi and Robinson. Meanwhile, the great Mentor Hubner turned out a series of incredible concept art sketches, literally creating the world of Kong out of thin air. I don't think anyone contributed more than Hubner, whose art captured the fantasy, realism, savagery, and sophistication the production was trying to capture. The rest of the visual effects saga will be covered in episode 3, but first, King Kong still had to be filmed.